everybody. Welcome to Speak Dicely, the podcast where I bring in other tabletop enthusiasts and we speak dicely together. My name is Teni Brant, and I'm pretty sure I didn't even introduce myself in the first episode. So, not until the very end, anyway. So people are going to log in and be like, log in, Jesus Christ.
Even then, at the end, you botched your own last name.
That's true. So, you know what? People have no idea.
Come log into my podcast.
So, hello, welcome to Speak Dicely. My name is Christy Clow, and your host today is Teni Brant.
Shit. Well, that was nice.
I'm not the host.
But he is also here.
Yes. On today's podcast episode, we're going to be talking about role play in tabletop games, mostly with a focus on D&D, because that's mostly what we've all played. And joined with me today, I've got Christy Clow and Anthony Saul.
Hi.
You didn't see it, but I was winking at the microphone.
Very suggestively.
Role play.
You got to get real close to that mic to pick up that audio.
Wink.
Wow. I'm surprised. Wow, that was loud in my headphones. Loud in my cans.
Oh, God.
Oh, man, I feel like a pro now.
Yeah?
Or more like a pronoun. Am I right? Anyway.
Oh, boy.
This is rough.
Mood. We are in a mood tonight, aren't we?
So we're still in the cabin.
And we've got cabin fever.
But we've gotten rid of the excess noise, aka me, from before.
Yeah, I was going to say,
now
I'm
here.
Yeah.
In the previous episode, you were some of the excess noise.
You were a troublemaker, and you still are,
But now I'm here.
to make trouble.
Yes.
Also,
Yeah.
we talked about you a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Not always by name.
I mean, how could we resist? He's so handsome.
He's all right.
Oh my goodness, we've had such a good day here. I thought the first podcast was fun.
I thought it was really fun.
Happy to have you back.
Yeah, I'm going to be here for all of them now. I've decided. I live here in this
You
microphone.
can't get rid of her.
You know, I was running this thing on my own. And I'm not paying you. Not yet.
I am well aware.
Anyway, let's move right along for that. Nah, it's all good. So in my intro, in my educational introductory series on this Dicely channel here, I touched a bit on about role play, but in the player's handbook, there really isn't a lot of help that they offer with when it comes to role play.
That is true.
I mean, it makes sense in a way. Oh, man, I'm stuttering. It makes sense in the sense that they're going to want to cover the rules, because what role play is very opinionated, and in the same way, definitely wasn't worth going to theater school for.
Yeah, it's actually funny. We've had this conversation with a lot of our theater school friends about how we feel like we've had more theater training being in D&D sessions than our like 30K theater degree. So money well spent. And by that, I mean the money I spent on the player's handbook and on all my dice.
Can't have enough dice.
That's true.
So I know you were on the previous episode, Christy, but do you guys kind of want to talk to us about like what your experience with tabletop role-playing games has been?
Sure. I'll start. Have you introduced me?
Yeah, you're Anthony Saul.
Okay, yes, that is me.
You are one of the first people I introduced in this episode.
Wow.
Just after me, I think. Maybe Christy, too.
So the top third.
That's right. You out of the three people here, you're in the top three.
Hell
Wow.
yes. So I have not been playing as long as Teni. I would say I've been playing less time than you, Christy.
That's true.
But my first D&D experience, I think, was with my high school friends.
But out of high school.
Out of high school, yeah. So about, I'd say 5-ish years ago, one of my friends.
No, it would have been less than that, because we
so?
we realized that our first game together was in 2016.
Yeah.
In the summer of, and it was in January 2017 that I started watching Crit Roll. So I think it would have been 2017 you started playing with your friends. It was around that same time.
Well, whenever it was within the last 5 years. And yeah, my first experience as a player was a friend running a game that he wanted to basically stream.
Right.
Similar to Crit Roll and these other actual play shows. We got one actual stream out of it. The first few games were just us playing, but the majority of the players didn't want to stream.
Yeah, that's fair. It's hard to get into a mindset of whether you just want to play or if you want to make it a performance.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the players that were in this were new, like me, and weren't totally invested in the roleplay aspect. I had watched a bit of Critical Role with Christy at that point, just caught some here and there and heard her talking about it. And so I was more down for the roleplay part of it. I wanted to, play this character and see if I could emulate what I had seen on these shows or heard about on these shows. When the story itself, and it felt like the DM was more just like what he wanted to happen. And he would roll dice out in the open as like I'm going to roll this dice on this number, this thing happens. And we were like, oh, okay, cool.
Like he was steamrolling it a lot, or
a little bit.
Yeah.
That's a rough thing when you take away the player's
Agency?
consequences of choice and agency. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Christy, do you want to quickly go over your experience? I know we talked about it
Yeah, for
last
sure.
episode, but
Yeah, so as we discussed in the previous episode, my first time playing was with you, but it was a one shot. And then from there, I started watching Critical Role religiously, and then started my first campaign. But again, it was kind of like a totally off the rails homebrew, and it really wasn't like very role play based. It was more just kind of like figuring out how you can kind of stretch the mechanics to just be wild. And yeah, it wasn't really until the campaign that we started, like myself, Anthony, and Josh and Melanie from the previous episode, with Anthony DMing, that we really started getting into kind of more what I would say is like the nitty gritty of a long-term campaign where the characters like mean so much to you and they're going on these like long journeys and changes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, having like a full story to tell.
exactly. Yeah.
It can be difficult when, well, and especially in this kind of case, when you start like watching a stream like Critical Role, which is so, they're of course professional actors, so they know how to interact with each other. They know how to invest themselves into a character, and role play isn't exactly acting. It does help if you know how to act, but anybody can really role play. So perhaps we'll jump into that kind of point of conversation. So like, what do you think is the difference between acting and role play?
I would say for most acting, if it's traditional, you have a script that you're going off of. Like the story itself is pre-written and you're just taking those words and kind of interpreting them and like making them your own in a way, but there is still kind of a guideline for what is expected. Because I think with role playing, it's more like deeper improv in a sense, because you have this person, this character that you've created, and it's just making decisions and connections through their viewpoint, I guess, like through their eyes, and just making choices that feel authentic to them.
Yeah. I don't come from an acting background. Like I've never been to theater school.
Lucky you.
I did a couple plays in elementary school and helped with lighting sometimes in high school. But beyond that, I've never like been trained on how to act or anything like that. So for me, diving into a character is something, at least at first, didn't feel natural. And it was hard for me to distinguish what I've seen on screen with actors versus what role play was. So having that, I think the distinguishing factor is when you are an actor, like Christy said, you have a script, but you also have someone directing you on how to act as that character, where in role play, you direct yourself and you get to make those choices of how you want that character to interact with the world. And role play, I think, spans more than just like a conversation between your character and a non-player character like a barkeep. I think role play encompasses your entire character arc.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because it's not just, I think when I hear the word role play, the first thing I'm thinking of is having kind of like, oh, like deep emotional conversations and things like that. But it is more than that. It's like, it affects your play style because, you know, if I'm my character is shy or something, I'm not going to be, you know, first one in the door, like swinging it, like I could be, but it's less likely. I'd be probably more likely to be someone playing like a reserved character, both in fighting style and in conversations and things like that. And so I think it really, informs all of your decisions.
Yeah, those are all very good points.
What do you think, Teni?
So I think you guys pretty much touched on basically everything I was thinking of when it comes to role play and acting. But yeah, so like with acting, you have your script, you have your director. It's a much more, you exactly know where things are going. That's what you get with a script. You have the story, and the only thing that the actor that an actor can bring to the script is their interpretation.
Yeah.
Whereas with role playing, and specifically in tabletop role playing, you get to make more decisions. You are, in a way, you are your director, you are your own actor, but you don't have to be a professional actor because we all exist in a world where we all make choices.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what D&D is. It's making choices, except we are in a different mode. You have to think like somebody else, but and I think a lot of players can relate to this as well. Like, I know a lot of the characters I make, I usually keep a piece of myself in them because it helps me kind of tie myself to them. So I've at least got an aspect that I completely understand about the character, and I can inform my decisions based off that. And as more decisions are made, I learn more about this character, and I'm like, all right, now I'm beginning to understand them that much more fully, and I can put myself in those shoes a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's true for not just for role play, but for a lot of stuff. Like, I think there's always a little bit of you in whatever you create. And it is kind of a good like touchstone for if you get a little bit lost in it, for instance. It's like something to come back to.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, something safe to kind of bring yourself to. This oddly enough, we now discussed like the difference between acting and role play, but what is role play? Do we think we really touched on that?
Ooh, I don't.
I guess we kind of did. I don't know.
Maybe in a little way, like, but I don't know how like further I would define it necessarily. Like, I just think that it's, if anything in my mind, it's a more intense version of improv.
Yes, and back to that improv there, yeah.
But then like that's me saying that coming from someone with an improv background, so that's like my framing device for it. So like you might have one different.
I guess role play to me would be more, I guess, the approach you take when you play a character, which can be dictated by the stats that character has or the background and whatnot. But I guess, I think it's really up to the player what path they take with their character, and like that kind of determines how they role play with that character. So that comes down to maybe the fun voice you come up with for it, or the mannerisms that you use, or your general disposition towards new people that your character meets, or towards your fellow party members even.
All right, so we're back in. We just turned the heat off, so that background noise should be gone now. It's all right.
Way to ruin the illusion.
No, it's fine. Who cares? I edit this shit.
Fair.
And hopefully the people at home enjoy listening to it. So thank you for liking my shit. So, and you briefly touched on improv there, Christy. For and I'm interested to hear your answer about this too, Anthony, because like Christy said, you don't have an improv background, but how do you guys improv your role play?
Ooh.
Like, how do you make your decisions on the fly?
That's a good question.
I can start us off.
I also had an answer.
You can go first.
So
what a nice guy.
I don't think this is going to necessarily be helpful to anyone else, because again, this is like very specific to me. But when I was improvising and I was on stage and I had kind of, like that adrenaline and that excitement, I don't think I was ever entirely conscious of like what I was doing or the decisions I was making. I would always just like, it felt like someone took over my body and was just like doing the scenes and like being in the moment. And it was like always really funny and like exciting. And that's how I feel sometimes when we're in the middle of like an intense role play. Like it takes me maybe like when we first start a game. It takes me about like 10 to 15 minutes to kind of sink into Ravi, which is my character in our campaign. And then once we're in it and we start having conversations and stuff in character, it just feels really natural. But again, it took about probably like 2 years to get to that point of finding a group that felt comfortable and like finding a character that I felt really attached to. So I don't know. It's just, I think at this point, like I just know her so well that I know kind of how she would respond to things and stuff like that. So it's just natural. That's it. It's just easy.
Yeah.
That's what
There you go, listener at home. Just be good.
Easy.
Well, like I think it's just it's obviously like where we are.
It's all right.
Where we are now with the campaign versus where we started 2 years ago. It's much different. Like I didn't know her that well then, and so I don't really know if it was at that same level, and you were new to it too. So I think what I would say is like a lot of it comes from just learning about your character as you play, and that begins to influence how you role play and the decisions you make. Because eventually it's like you just know the character so well that you do know what they would say. That's kind of what I was trying to say before.
That was basically what I was going to say as well, which is like, I played a couple games as a player and then basically jumped right into DMing. And that was a very fun challenge that I, reveled in. And I think I did a pretty good job. 2-year-long campaign, it can't be that bad.
They keep coming back.
They do. But I think it's all about knowing the characters that you create and what they would do in specific situations. So like even a character that as a DM you have to come up with, maybe not on the fly, because those characters often are very one-dimensional, but for a major character that you get to spend a lot of time in as a DM, it's very rewarding to know them well and being able to answer the question no matter what it is in that character's mindset becomes very natural over time.
Mm-hmm. Like during character creation, and not everyone uses these mechanics, but like when you're building a character, like and going through backgrounds, they give you like the personality traits, the flaws, the bonds, and these are things that can influence, or at least
they can guide.
Yeah, they're guide points. I think that's what I was trying to get to is if you're not trained in improv, you just gotta like make decisions about the character firstly, like something about them, an event in their past, and then think about how they've been affected. And once you start asking yourself questions about your character, you get a understanding of how they would behave in situations. Like what have they gone through, and empathizing with an imaginary character. Like
just like you would empathize with another human being.
No, fuck that. But no, exactly. Just as you would empathize with another person, you'll be able to empathize with your character, and just making decisions. I think is so important. Yeah.
And I think for someone who is new to this, using what they have set up in the book, like the flaws and the backgrounds and stuff like that, it is a really good way to start yourself off. Like I love the flaw system and the bonds and the traits, because it's a really easy way to just know like a base amount of information about your character before you've really spent a lot of time with them. And I think for me, it's like what really helps like flesh them out in a way too.
And like I still use those guides in the books for NPCs, and I've used them for my own created characters just as like starting points to how to begin playing as that character. Because those, you can pick them during your character creation and then start with them. And then as you play the character, you can always change them.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no law, unless your DM is very hard about that kind of stuff, saying that you can't change your mind, because that's all of our prerogatives.
Yeah.
Not to be a judgy Denny over here, but I don't know if that's my kind of DM. You can't change your mind. But on a similar vein, I think when you do make either a discovery or like a decision about your character, and if that comes up like the middle of a game, I think it's important to kind of like take a note of that kind of thing. If like you've discovered something new, just so you can be consistent moving forward. Because you can improvise and you can make discoveries, but then consistency also helps make a character feel more real.
For sure, yeah.
And you can even take that moment when you discover something, if there's an opportunity in game, to explore it with the rest of your party.
Yeah, like say you got a character who the party gets into a fight, they're fighting against spiders. A player decides, oh my gosh, I'm terrified of spiders. And so now you've got this character that needs to overcome some sort of fear during this conflict. But now we've got more questions that arise, like, why are they scared of spiders? That's something that the player can think about now, if they hadn't already.
I mean, spiders are pretty scary to begin with, so.
Well, I pulled this wasn't. I'm not a great improviser either. This is a very pointed example because I made a character who was a wizard who was also scared of spiders. This was one of my first 5e characters, and the reason he was scared of them was because he was a wizard who in one of his classes dropped a jar of fire spiders down his pants.
Oh God!
So this was a very silly character.
That would create a phobia, yes.
Yeah.
But fire though, he's fine.
Fire spiders, no.
Just to quickly move away from the spider in the pants bit.
You don't like the bit?
Oh, it's a great one. But no, you just had me thinking, like, if you want another example of kind of like making a discovery.
Yeah, sure.
That's okay if I can go on kind of like a little mini
go for
sidebar.
it.
Okay. So I was thinking like this was like a pretty recent one in our campaign, was something that I think we were having like a pretty like role play heavy episode.
We don't
session.
record these
We
sessions.
don't. Just how I think about it in my mind. So we are having a pretty role play heavy session. So there was a character that we were all pretty close with, and they were kind of like our mentor, and they were the ones sending us out on missions and stuff. And then we recently found out some backstory information about them, that they're actually perhaps like not a really good person, or they've made some kind of extremely questionable decisions. And because my character has always been the one that's the closest to them, like as I was talking with my other two party members, I kind of like I said out loud something that I was just like, whoa, I guess that is how I'm feeling right now, which was like, I think either way, I'm the one that has to deal with him, whether it be I kill him or save him. And the moment I said that, I'm like, I think I've been thinking that for a long time and just like hadn't realized it, or I hadn't said it to myself. And so it's so cool to like say that out loud in character and be like, whoa, like I didn't realize I was feeling that way, but it tracks. And so it's fun how like things can just surprise you, you know? Yeah. I don't know how to finish my
Nobody saw
thoughts.
your little dance there, but it was very cute.
We're very excited about D&D.
I'm just like vibrating with excitement. I'm like, let me talk about my character.
So when you guys role play, and this is another thing I talk about in the introductory series, but I imagine pretty much everybody at this table kind of does a mixture of the descriptive approach to role play and the active approach, like active being you talk in character, your voice is your character's, and the descriptive is I describe my character doing this. They're talking to this person, and this is what they say.
Mm-hmm.
I think I definitely lean more on the active side than the descriptive side, just because I don't know, it feels more natural to me in a way. But I think the descriptive side is an easier entry point for newer players to do, because it feels maybe like perhaps like less pressure to know right away like how your character sounds or like how they talk. So if you're kind of like, oh, I think my character would go over here and do this, that's still role play, and perhaps just like an easier bar to meet than going full on like actor mode, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. I would say, depending on the situation, descriptive is sometimes a better option to go, because not all interactions with characters you meet in the world are going to be just a nice little conversation like this podcast is. Sometimes it goes as far as combat, and other times it's very tense nonverbal communication of sending glances back and forth, or trying to give hand signals with silent languages, or like sign language, I guess, would be
Or
the
thieves can't.
thieves can't. I didn't want to call it out by name in case people listening to this don't know what that is yet.
Yeah.
But if they've watched the introductory video, maybe they do. No? Okay.
Nah, probably
That's
not.
fine.
Putting
Thieves
Denny
can't
on.
is like sign
blast.
language for rogues and sneaky people.
Yeah, like in the movie when you see those soldier guys like doing their hand,
Yeah, like their
Or like
pointing
third
tactical-
base coaches in baseball,
Yeah.
where they're touching their hats and their arms and their other parts of their bodies.
and performing the Macarena.
Yeah,
Hmm.
That's thieves camp.
that's my favorite baseball call is the Macarena. I don't know what it means, but it's a good one.
I love it when they throw the ball and the audience goes, "Hey, Macarena!" It's like everyone saw it coming except for the batter.
Yeah, you'd think by now they'd learn.
It's easy call, really.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I also find myself doing the blend of the two because, like, you can't get everything across in like your character body language and your voice. Like sometimes you just got to be like, my character moves over there because I can't convey that with my character voice unless I'm going.
that is a good point. Like I guess there's different moments when each one is more applicable than the other.
Yeah, in fact, I think you can do an entire roleplay session using just descriptive, but you can't do that for completely active.
No, I guess you couldn't really, because there are those moments where you are kind of saying like, oh, I secretively slip this thing into my bag, and it's not like I'm putting this in my bag, everyone.
Yeah, the active approach is just me going, and from that you should interpret that I've slipped the thing into
Yeah,
my
exactly.
bag.
So I guess there is actually more of a blend than I first realized.
Yeah.
But
and depending on how you are playing with your chosen party and your chosen DM, descriptive might be necessary because you, especially in these times, you're probably not sitting around a table with a bunch of your friends playing. You might be using online ways of doing things, online tabletops and voice chats.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really lose the eye contact and the connectivity with the players.
it's actually a really interesting point, because for our campaign, we've always just done it over voice call because we're doing it remotely. And so we've never actually had very rarely have we ever had it around the table
We've had maybe 2 or 3 in-person
sessions, but we never do video call.
Nope.
We always do
It's always
voice
just
call.
voice.
Really?
Which is really interesting because I know a lot of other campaigns that I'm in refer to do the video call, but
Yeah.
I think perhaps it might have been easier in a way to start doing role play without having to look at the other person, which isn't necessarily always the case, because I think if it's acting based, you're kind of meant to play off the other person, but it's almost like I could feel like I could get more vulnerable by being hidden, in that way.
Yeah, I suppose there's a truth to that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of-
The other game that I run is for 5 new players. I guess at this point we've been playing for a year now, but we play with we started in person and now we've moved to Zoom calls using video, and the role play is not as there as it is in the game that I run with Christy here.
And that could be for a variety of different reasons.
Oh, there's so many variables.
But I don't know. It's just something that kind of occurred to me. Maybe that's why I felt more comfortable, because I do feel amount of pressure if people can see me that I'm also trying to actually act with my face and my body, whereas I can just kind of be thinking more about the character if I'm just talking.
Mm-hmm. And I suppose there's an element of being able to imagine the face of the character too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Like
then
it's-
it's less my friends and more it's all theater of the mind.
Yeah, because if I'm talking to you like this, you're
Yeah.
looking at me and you're like, well, that's Denny doing a funny voice. So, Christy,
Yeah.
you wanted to bring up a point as well.
Oh, I can do it now.
Yeah, sure.
So I was just going to talk a little bit about how role playing can influence real life too.
God damn it, Sleek. Sleek the musician
Jesus
made the
Christ.
intro to the podcast. Thank you, Sleek, for making my music.
I think he only shit disturbs in the background so that you'll shut him out.
Yeah, probably. He's like, Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm not tagging him.
There's a few different ways I'm thinking of how D&D started being used in high schools and stuff like that as a way to help kids kind of talk about their problems without actually having to talk about their problems. I think that's such a cool concept that they can't say it in real life, but they can say it as their character and work through it, like work through those emotions. And I was talking about this last night, but you were asleep. So it was like through our like role playing and like me playing a character who is like interested in everyone and stuff, like that helped me realize that I'm bisexual. And I was like, oh, like, and like having, I think, that safety of like, if people don't know, Anthony is my significant other. Like being able to role play off of you made it like a safe space for me to figure that kind of like to figure that out. So it's just like there's just so many cool things that can happen in a game. And it's just awesome and it's fun.
Have you, Anthony, made any like personal discoveries about your life through role playing? Like, because role playing is very therapeutic. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like Dungeons and Dragons has done so much for me, and I don't think I would have gotten into it if Christy had not blazed the trail for me.
By being unemployed and just watching hours upon hours of Critical Role.
Hey, do what you got to do, you know?
He's like, your unemployment changed my life.
Changed my life too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's good. D&D has definitely done a lot of good for me in terms of realizing what I want out of, I guess, life and relationships, be it through friends or with Christy. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and I think a lot about how I'm not crying. I'm just touching my eye.
Could have gotten away with that.
Both are illegal.
I keep forgetting that we're not being filmed. So.
Viewers, condemn her. She touched her eye. Viewers, crap.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
Damn it.
Yeah,
Those who view with their ears.
You view well.
This is, I guess, not quite like role play based, but more just kind of just D&D as a whole, or I guess just role playing games as a whole, and like how impactful they can be. Like I touched on it a little bit in the first episode, but through playing my first campaign and watching Critical Role, like I was so depressed during that time, and like that was what kind of pulled me out of it. And I think it's really helped to like connect me more with my friends, and just it was an easy way to kind of get back into like a normal life when I just really wasn't feeling like I wanted to go anywhere or do anything. So I really do think about like how I was in like a terrible place at that time and how much like D&D brought me to like a better area, you know? So it's just the best.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Yeah.
I totally get that. The character in the introductory series, we made a character named Mickey Tumperun, which is actually a character that I had made for another channel that I had previously been on, where we played D&D. And I though that game was very much for the purpose of entertainment for others to view, it was, like I said earlier, I always put a bit of myself into every character, or most every character I make. And with that one, he was a very naive kid. He wanted to be a hero, and was very gung-ho about it. Like, just his morality was black and white. There's good and evil. And I think that naivety was something about myself that I explored. And in a decision that character made, resulted in the death of hundreds of people because he did something that he perceived to be good. And then he began to hate himself for that action. So I think that was a very interesting thing to explore with a character like that, is like, I want to be good. There are consequences.
Yeah. And I think just role playing allows you to experience things that maybe you don't want to experience in real life, but you are curious about. And so it just gives you a safe place to do that. So it's like, I don't think anyone wants to be evil, maybe, hopefully. But, you know, sometimes it can be just fun to try something new and to see like, oh, what if I was like really like egotistical character, or just like super bloodthirsty or something like that, you know? Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to mean anything about your psyche or anything. It's just something to try out. But
as long as you're in a safe space with people you trust, then roleplay can be such a powerful tool for good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When you explore those kinds of things, like playing an evil game or playing a character who is very manipulative or egotistical, it's important to set up those like barriers with the group to be like making sure everyone feels comfortable, making sure everyone feels safe. Like one of the most recent characters I played, secrets after secrets after secrets. I was terrified that the friend group we were playing with was just gonna hate me because I made such a character delved in so many secrets, and like every session it was just by the way, here's this thing. And they're like, why didn't you tell us sooner? And almost after every session, I was like, are you guys okay? Is this a bit too much? And thankfully everyone was fine with it. But I was like, I don't want to push too hard.
And I think that's a really important thing for new players to know, is that if you're going to go into a campaign and you want to role play, like, you have to set up kind of safety check-ins with people, because certain things maybe people don't want to do or don't want to have discussed. And if it is going to be something that feels more intense, then you need to just be comfortable enough with everyone that you can check in afterwards. It's like, are we good still? Like, how's everyone
Or
feeling?
even beforehand.
Yeah, both.
Like before
both,
the
honestly,
campaign even begins. Like what we've done for the Dicely campaign upcoming.
Yeah, I mean, it's not out yet, but I did it again. This guy right here. The audience members at home, we're eventually going to have a campaign on this. Christy and Anthony are both going to be in it. We're going to have a fun time.
Yeah.
Continue.
But we've already had a couple session zeros in which we've talked about what we're okay with, what we're not okay with. And I'm sure we will have many more conversations about this before the campaign starts and during the campaign to make sure that everyone is comfortable and happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Because, like, I know, I'm just going to put it out there. When people talk about role play, there's automatically those people in the gutter who is like, the bedroom role play. Those people have a safe word. So does D&D. There's that similarity.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe it's not blueberry pancakes, but we have we have something figured out to know that, like, if somebody's feeling uncomfortable, we got to put the reins on.
Yep.
We got to make sure everyone's comfortable, because this is a game and everyone's meant to have fun. And it would kill me if I knew that I made somebody scared or I made someone feel awful because of something I did.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the most important part of roleplay to me, especially when it's between your character and another player's character, is trust.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't trust the other person that you're having a scene with, then someone is probably going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't get the training of, like, well, actually, it's amazing nowadays. Like, actors also get like you've got fight choreographers, but now you've got intimacy choreographers. And I think that's amazing.
It really is. And it's baffling to me that it's such a new concept, because those are probably the most intense scenes that someone does. And to not have someone there to make sure everyone feels okay with what's happening is crazy.
That's probably because for the majority of those scenes, they are directed by men, and the coordinators are men, and the producers are men. So
we're heading in good directions now.
Hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
So what kind of things help you guys with your role play? Like, we talked earlier about, like, the four things: the personality traits, the bonds, the flaws. Flaws are great. I actually want to talk about flaws for a bit.
I would love to talk about flaws.
You want to do that now?
Fuck it. Let's do it.
We're jumping right in. Let's do it.
Flaws.
Diddle-diddle-doo. Have a card that comes on the viewer screen for this podcast. For all those listening with your eyes.
All right. So we were talking about flaws.
Flaws.
My flaw is I've got a really sexy voice.
What a flaw.
Poor you.
It's my greatest weakness.
Horrible.
Anyway.
Like, are you wanting to talk about your system of doing the flaw and a feat?
Not specifically what I've homebrewed.
In this segment,
just
Danny
about, like,
plugs his own stuff.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I know I'm plugging it for him because I think it's really cool.
I can't even take credit for it because I stole it from other people.
Well,
Who did you steal it for? And please credit them.
I'll never tell. They'll have to come after me in court.
We don't want that.
It's fine. D&D people steal from each other all the time. Not that I encourage stealing, but I mean, we everyone's got great ideas within the community,
and we're sharing them.
It's all for the fun of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not making a profit, so I'm good.
Yeah.
Anyway, flaws. Mine is stealing.
Apparently.
Flaws really help roleplay in that they make a character so much more relatable.
Because people are flawed.
Sure.
And that's why I think I struggle with the people who want to play characters that's just like, oh, this hero complex, super broken character that's so powerful and blah, blah. I'm like, that just doesn't seem fun. It's it's fun to fail and fun to have limitations to what you're doing, and I don't know.
Yeah, if you
Just makes them
wanted
feel
to
real.
play a character that doesn't have flaws, play a video game.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, D&D is, of course, a role-playing game. That's why we're talking about role-playing here. Though I understand some players do enjoy going on a power trip.
Sure.
That's fine. Find your group. I'm sure there's a group of players out there who want to play with you. But we as players here, we like fleshing out these characters.
Telling a nice deep story.
Yeah.
Real deep.
So what kind of flaws have you guys played with before?
It hasn't come up as much as I would like, but in our campaign for Ravi, the flaw I started with was, and this is what I always like to do, like, or like have kind of for a lot of my characters, is that they're like overly curious to the point that they might get themselves into trouble, because me, the player, is curious and excited about the world. So it's kind of my shoe-in to just go into places I'm not supposed to and to learn a lot about the lore. It hasn't come up as much as I would like, but I think it has like a decent amount. So
There's something to be said about like not going ham on your flaw. Yeah, it's just like presenting it enough times where it's like, that can be an issue with this character. Let's see if it happens. But not doing it so much that the party's going to go, fuck, we have to avoid every situation where something new comes up because they're going to be curious about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you're probably doing a fine job at that.
Yeah. I
Thank you.
haven't really had the opportunity to play too many characters deeply yet. So I am looking forward to being able to dive deep into a single character with Denny's campaign upcoming. But I guess for the characters that I've played the most in the game I run for Christy, flaws definitely help with making them seem more realistic. Because like I said, people are flawed. And to Denny's point, if you overplay that flaw, the characters suddenly become very unrealistic. Because a person cannot just be a kleptomaniac all the time.
Yeah.
Unless you're Denny.
Yeah, that's true.
Guilty as charged. Well, I sure got busted.
Hey, give me back my wallet.
Not yours? When it comes to flaws, what are some flaws that immediately pop to your head, aside from the ones you've experienced and you have yet to experience?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like you mentioned kleptomania as well.
Like, I think like the one where like, you always say like the wrong thing.
Like somebody who's too honest.
Yeah. Or like isn't like a good talker, and so they always kind of just put their foot in their mouth. One that I'm like was looking at for the upcoming campaign was based on the family, like the clan member background. It's just like all the different ones that you could choose from based on like coming from this like bigger group. So like you're always kind of talking over people because that was like how your family worked, or like you don't understand personal space. And it's just, even just from that little segment, there were so many different options you could pick from, and each one I could see like how well it would fill out a character, you know?
Yeah, you get the sense that character's from a big family where it's just like, it's chaos. They're clearly used to every family member fights for themselves, survives. Yeah, there's the breakfast table full of pancakes.
Yeah,
everyone grab as many pancakes as you can or you're not getting breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. I like the ones where the character has to spend some time discovering how they interact with other people. For our upcoming game, my character is going to not have a great grasp of the common tongue in this new land that he's traveled to. So that's going to be interesting to roleplay with that, I think. Trying to use broken common, quote unquote, to converse with people and trying to learn about the different culture.
And that's why I wanted to talk about your like flaw and a feat setup that you had us do.
Yeah, so for our homebrew, one of the things I've introduced is if you take a flaw, which I've essentially made a bunch of anti-feats, you can take a feat at first level.
I just think it's such an interesting concept because it is for me like the flaws that define a character more than the feats. And I remember you like when I said, "Oh, I want you to make me a custom flaw based on this mechanic I want for my character," And you were like, okay, sure. Like, did you have a feat picked out that you wanted? I'm like, no. Like, I didn't even think about it. It just like wasn't that important to me because I just really wanted to take the flaw.
Right.
And just, it was, I don't know, it just excites me more because I think that's kind of how you delve into the nitty gritty more of your character, because that gives you like a little like nugget that you're trying to figure out, or that will like lead a lot of your interactions with people.
And for anyone out there who isn't familiar with the concept, because I know I haven't gone over it in any videos up to this point, but feats, and we're specifically talking about D&D, feats are a kind of a package, passive kind of thing that really makes a character powerful. Like, you can learn a heck of a lot of skills, you gain some proficiencies, usually an ability score increase. Like, it really powers up your character. So I've created these anti-feats, which really adds a mechanical deficit to your character. So I guess kind of moving forward, are there other elements aside from flaws that you use in your role playing, like the ideals, the flaws, and also voices?
Yeah, all of them.
Well,
that was easy.
I'm not as good as remembering to do the ideals and the bonds as much. They're ones that I like and I always kind of just forget about, unfortunately, because I think if I do them at the beginning, they change, or like as the campaign is going, but I wouldn't be able to like write it down what it is. It's just there, I suppose.
Yeah. You can always make your own, which is the nice thing of you start with what the book might give you, and then from there you tweak it to better fit what your character actually believes in as they adventure through the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think going forward into this new campaign, that's probably what I'm going to do, is to sit down and think, instead of like something that to me seems, it'll be inspired by the ideals that are in the book, but is more specific to the character that I'm creating.
Yeah.
To actually allow it to influence me the way I haven't had it in the past.
Yeah, I find that the ideals and bonds and the personality traits that the book lays out are pretty good starting points for making character decisions when you're in game, especially if you're a DM and you're trying to figure out how a character would react to a certain situation that has come up between your NPC and the player characters. I highly recommend that you use the ideals and such when you're making NPCs.
Yeah, especially for NPCs. You know, for players, like, these things are helpful. These things can be used, but they don't always need to be. Like,
no.
Kind of like we were saying earlier, like some things you'll discover as you play the game. Like one of the recent characters I made, like, I tried to fill these things in right away. I was like, his ideal is freedom. As the campaign went on, this is that same character that was like holding secrets and all that.
Yeah.
And later on, I realized, oh, his thing isn't freedom. It's justice. He's in it for justice. Like, I thought I knew. Well, I didn't know. I learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the other half of that for voices, it's something I always want to do. It's just not something I'm confident in. And I think it's because I came from a theater background where everything felt so judgmental that I'm scared to try something that isn't right. And it's getting easier the more campaigns that I'm in to know that I can just try. And if it fails, then hey, I kind of made a new dialect. Great. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's still like a hard thing to feel comfortable doing.
Oh, trust me. Every time I try to remember an NPC's voice that I haven't voiced in 4 sessions,
God.
and it's like slightly off, I'm like, I know this is wrong, but I can't find it. So this is what it is now.
Yeah, and hopefully your players will forget too.
Yeah,
For sure.
They know that you're trying to convey a certain character, and if you act like the character would normally, then yeah, they get the point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think from a DM perspective, on the note of like confidence in doing voices, I think when you're a DM, I think you kind of get a bit more of that confidence because you have to do so many.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this one didn't work, but whatever. This one was funny, so
yeah. But I can totally understand, especially when you're playing a character, how it can be a bit intimidating because you're that character and you're always that character. So it's kind of like I always got to have that voice.
You want to get it right.
Yeah.
Keep it consistent.
Yeah, exactly. But for anybody out there who's kind of sharing those same feelings, like, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Like, as long as you're having fun, as with most things, as you practice, you'll get better, you'll get more consistent.
You might discover voices that you didn't even know you could do.
Yeah. Like, and I keep jumping back to this, but the most recent character I played, he started off as a Jack Sparrow slot, and he was a drunkard. And then eventually kind of just revealed himself, and he was a bit more down with it. Just a bit deep and grovelly.
Yeah.
But then he'd occasionally dip back into the Australian kind of thing. I don't even know what he is.
Just all over the place.
All of the above.
He was all over the place. And then there was one time where that character talked to somebody who had like a bit of a British accent. I can't even do that accent, but I just kept doing the DM's voice. And I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
Shit.
Well, it's like when you meet someone new in like real life and they have an accent and you have to stop yourself from trying to copy it because you want to relate to them, because that's just the human condition, is you want to relate to other humans.
That like mirroring concept. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
like, hey,
God.
you seem like a nice person. I'm going to sound like you so that you like me too.
But, I do like your voice for Big Mama. That's a character that me and Christy play in the same game. She's just got like a bit of a deeper voice. It's really cool.
And not even that, like I fluctuate on sometimes, just forget.
And I don't even notice. I'm just like, that's Big Mama.
Yeah, because I think for me, for when I haven't been comfortable doing a voice specifically, I do try and do like manner of speaking, which is different in a way.
That's a great point. Yeah. You don't have to
do a voice.
Like do an accent or something. I think it's just like, if this is my normal voice and this is my Big Mama voice and I'm talking a bit deeper, but if I just talk slower in my normal voice, it's still, you get what I'm doing, And so if I just slip up and I don't remember to pitch it down, it's the same thing, really.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things that go into voice, and this could be a totally different subject too. Like you've got pitch, you got accent, you got speed. There's so many things you.
This
can
is now
change.
a voiceover podcast.
Oh, frig! If only I were qualified.
Yeah, me too, buddy.
And then there's like places you can talk out of. Like, do you got a chesty voice and you got a nasally voice?
Yeah.
There are places that you can speak from within your body as well. But yeah, I'm not qualified to teach anybody about that.
One of our friends who we will be playing in the game with is slightly more qualified than we are.
Yeah.
Yes. I was like, which one? Of course. Yes. The voice actor.
The only one.
Oh, man, I really like talking about this stuff. Thank you guys for coming in. We're not done yet, but I just wanted to thank them for this brief moment.
Thank you for having us.
So something that I find comes up a lot in games that I've played in, and my buddy Jason. I love my buddy Jason.
He's a good guy.
He's got an interesting thing. We were talking about decision making earlier, but what he does when he needs to make a decision is he'll roll the D20, and that's his way to find out something about his character. It's like, does he like seafood? Instead of him just going yeah or no, he'll be like, I'm going to roll the dice. Okay. And I think that's interesting in a sense that he gives himself a creative creative
limitation.
That's the word. I'm good at this. So what I want to talk to you guys about is that kind of thing like metagaming? And how does metagaming tie into role play, and where is the line?
That's interesting.
I don't personally think that example is. I think that's just a way for him to learn about his character. But like, where do the rules and role play kind of, where should they not go?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I say, I wouldn't say it's metagaming, but it definitely is a specific choice to do it that way. And maybe it would be easier for some people instead of just feeling like just deciding themselves.
I guess it depends how much you care about that character. But D&D is also a game. And with many role-playing games, if you have the privilege to play a lot of them, then if you want to randomize some of, the little quirks of your characters, go for it. Because that's a great way to just take that weight off of your shoulders and roll a dice, because many role-playing games are just about rolling dice and having fun with your friends. So
yeah, and I guess for your thing about the metagaming, I might need you to break it down a bit more.
So
but
here's a famous example. So a party is getting into combat. a party member goes down, and say the party's cleric isn't a fan of goblins. The party member that went down is a goblin. And they're like, I'm not going to heal them because that's not what my character would do. Is that too far in role play?
Ooh.
I would say yes. I think it is because that directly affects another player's enjoyment of the game, potentially.
Yeah. That it's hard because you want to make your decisions authentically, but in general, like I think it would just be hard to be in a like campaign like that, like knowing that like one of my other players actively did not like my like character
just because of their race.
Yeah, that would like really like probably frustrate me a lot.
But this is the kind of thing that happens in a lot of for new players. They're like they'll read about the ranger and they're like, oh, the ranger doesn't like these types of dragons, for example. And then a player plays a dragonborn. They're like, you're dragonkin.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. I think that more comes from the roots that D&D comes from. That it is kind of like the system is kind of based in racist terms sometimes, which they are improving on, and you've improved upon their system by using the ancestry and culture instead.
Shout out to oh dear, now I gotta look up the I'll give them a shout out. You guys keep talking.
Yeah, what I would say though, and it is like it's very murky waters in my opinion, but I'm thinking like go with your role play gut unless it's in my mind like actively against another player, like in that example, like oh, I'm not going to heal that player, because in the example I'm thinking of is the one that I really like was from Critical Role Campaign 2, where Ashley Birch was a guest player and she decided that her character was so terrified of the person they were fighting that she gave herself disadvantage on her attacks because she would have struggled like overcoming that fear. And it did lead to
spoilers.
It did lead to like party members getting hurt, but it wasn't like that wasn't her intention necessarily. So it wasn't actively like I want to hurt that party member. So to me that's like a little bit, it's skewed. It's a little bit different than actively like I'm not healing that party member, you know?
In that particular scenario, also shout out to Arcanist Press, who created the Ancestry and Culture, an alternative to race.
Thank you, Arcanist Press.
But going back to that example, I think the difference in that situation is she tried.
Yeah.
Yeah, she gave herself the disadvantage because it made sense. The character was terrified, but she tried.
Yeah, it's not like she turned away and was like, I'm just not going to attack this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I've talked about this before, it's what's important if you have some sort of block that would hinder or that might possibly make the game bad for other people, find the way to say yes. It's like...
That comes back to improv.
Yeah.
Yes, and.
That's right. Yes, and. But in this situation, it's like, if I don't do anything, somebody's going to be mad at me in real life.
Yeah.
So... Yeah. Find out why the character would say yes, do the thing, and then find out what it means afterwards. What changes? What does this mean for the characters?
That's a good point. Yeah. And I think that could lead to some really interesting places too. Like, I think that's more interesting than just saying like, oh, I'm just not going to do this thing.
Yeah.
It just like the same in improv. It just dead ends it. And then it's kind of like, okay, well, great. Now what, you know?
Yeah. Finding these interesting avenues creates complexities, and where complexities are, there is stories to explore.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I mean, like I've played in so many games where it's like somebody, and kind of like that example with Ashley Birch in Critical Role, they'll be like, you know what? I didn't notice that because my character wouldn't have noticed that because they have crappy perception or something like that. And it's like, good on you. You understand how your character would function.
See, I think what it is that you can make a decision for yourself, but you shouldn't make a decision for another player. That's and maybe like that decision you made for yourself will end up impacting another player. But if it wasn't your intention, I think that's where I would say that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, like it obviously is painful and it might suck, but it's better than you be like actively saying, I'm not doing this for that character specifically.
You made a mistake, but not a deliberate one.
Yeah, exactly.
And on the topic of like not making choices for other characters, like you have, this is a common example as well, where it's like player v player. like these situations come up, players want to fight each other or they're trying to undermine each other, and that just doesn't build for a good play table. So yeah, in situations like where I want to incite another player because I think they're being shifty, it's a great way to handle that is like have that player roll insight, and based on their roll, look to the other player and go, you can go ahead. Do they trust you, or do they discern something from you? Like you tell them the result.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that for you, even as the DM. Yeah. So there's finding the consent between the players. So kind of moving on from this, how do you feel you guys have grown as role players? What do you think you did to improve?
I think mine was more quantity, spending quality time with a single character. Because Denny, as you know, as a DM, you're making up hundreds of characters for a campaign over so many sessions, and half of them are just made up on the spot because your character's like, I'm going to go over here to this place that you were not prepared for. And you're like, all your notes go flying into the air. And you're like, sure, character generator, this one sounds like this. Great.
Well, and I think for you, maybe, like this is how I'm perceiving it, but for you, your role playing as a DM comes from kind of the situations that we put you in. Like the example I'm thinking of was when, similar to what I mentioned earlier with the character that I felt like I was responsible for his fate. He had an accomplice who we were kind of like grilling, and we were being very hard on him because it's like, oh, you knew what he did and you like were still friends with him and you still supported him and you told no one. And we just spent like 10, 15 minutes just asking him all these really hard questions, and you just had to respond. You had to, and I don't think you were you weren't expecting us to go there. I don't think.
No, I didn't expect you guys to be quite so hard on this old gnomish man.
So for you, like the role playing maybe isn't like a character that you spend a lot of time with, but you have to kind of just like quickly respond.
Yeah. And I knew the character well that you guys were grilling. I wasn't prepared for quite the assault on him, but I knew how he would respond to that. So I acted accordingly.
And I think for me, like growing, that was the question, growing in role play, or
how
what have you done
grown
to grow as a role player?
I think it really is just the length that we've been in the campaign for. And I think that's why I struggle now in other campaigns. If it's pretty clear right out the gate that role play isn't going to be a thing, I don't do anything to try and like get my character to like, I don't really do anything to like role play with other people if no one else is really kind of doing it. Because it is kind of like a vulnerable place to put yourself in. And if no one else is going there with you, I don't think it's like you don't want to be there alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think it's trying to find people who also want to do it and just kind of get comfortable with them.
Yeah. Sussing out the level of role play that other players want to do. Because it's true. There's a lot of games where some characters will very minimally like have one-on-one interactions with each other. And it's like, no, I really feel like a pawn in this one.
Yeah.
This is just a whack and slash.
Yeah, which is kind of like how I'm feeling now, being someone who is in like quite a few campaigns. I'm starting to think that I don't necessarily want to be in campaigns anymore unless they are like they have the role play element to me, because like that to me is what like brings me back to D&D like over and over and over again. It's like I want to experience those stories and like tell one with other people, and it's just like you're just bouncing around kind of like, oh, I go here and I fight and I go there and I fight. It's like, I don't care. Like, I want to know like what my character thinks and what they're doing. Like,
it's draining to not be invested in a story.
Yeah. So it's almost like I feel now like I might be more selective of like what campaigns I play in, because it's like, if I'm going to be spending time on it, I want to be doing it in kind of a fulfilling way.
Yeah.
Yeah. This brings us to Question Dicely, the section of the podcast where somebody emails in a question and I'm going to talk about it with myself and my guests.
Yay.
If
you can just talk about it with yourself.
Just you. We're going to actually go, so this is really fun.
Hi, me. I regret doing that voice instantly. That's going to be a character.
That was very high.
I didn't like either of them.
Wow, the
You
one was
didn't
my
like his
normal
regular
voice.
voice?
I mean,
Wow. Okay. Well, wait a minute. Did I even write the question? Yes, I did. Okay. I was like, whoo. Yeah. So for listeners out there, if you also have a question you'd like to send in to this podcast, please email zippity zappity. Please email me at dicelychannel@gmail.com. That's all one word, dicelychannel@gmail.com.
at
So-
geel.com.
geel.com.
The slimiest email server.
Oh my gosh. God damn it. I'm going to.
Who has sent us a lovely question today?
Okay. So thank you, Anthony. So this question comes from Matt, who left no last name, but he is a friend of the channel. Thank you, Matt, for sending in the question.
We love Matt.
Or do we?
I do.
So what his question is, well, it starts with a bit of a statement. I have found in some past games that when there is a discrepancy in role-playing ability, it can lead to some players feeling left out or overlooked. What would you do in a scenario like that? So this is a bit about group dynamic.
Yeah. Well, I can answer as a DM. I would try to maybe not shift the spotlight onto them, because that can make a player feel very vulnerable and kind of attacked, because they probably already know that they don't feel involved. And when the spotlight suddenly swivels to them, that can be a very scary moment, because they're probably thinking to themselves, oh, it's fine. I'm just going to sit out for a while and listen. And then suddenly the DM's like, what do you think? What? So I think what I would do in that situation is maybe not put the spotlight on them, but steer the action towards them in a gentle way. And I think how I would do that would depend on the situation.
Right. So let's say, for example, we've got a negotiation happening. Your party is talking to a ruler of a city, and you're trying to establish trade with another city. And of course, you got the one character who's very high charisma.
Yeah, they're talking.
Yeah, but the ruler's finding that they have too much of a single mind, like just that one character. How do you think you can swivel around to one of the other party members?
I would say maybe knowing your players is very important. And I find having a separate sheet with passive scores and languages that they know can be very useful to engaging these players, and maybe not engaging the quieter player with a direct confrontation in like a conversation, but having them notice something with passive perception, say, like there's something off about the way that this person is talking. Like you notice maybe they're not giving you the whole truth.
Give them a bit of a nugget that they have.
Give them a nugget. I love me a good nugget.
Tender.
Now I want some chicken nuggets.
My bad.
Thanks, Teni.
But I like that. I like that a lot. What do you think, Christy?
I don't know. I feel like you're a bit more limited as another player at the table. I think it would be just a matter of maybe, because I can't give them like a nugget in that same way. So mine would have to be like more conversation based. But I think it's more like some people, if they're more experienced, are more willing to start conversations. So I think it'd be maybe just a matter of being the person to start it, because I think that can be like an intimidating thing. Like I mentioned, like if I'm at a table where no one's role playing, I feel too intimidated to be the one that takes that first step. But if it seems like the other people like want to, but they don't know how to start, then yeah, I can be that person that kind of begins it, right?
And I think a newer player or a quieter player, more reserved, is probably more receptive to one of their fellow players initiating a conversation with them, because they are sitting on the same side of the table versus like the DM who's, behind this, rather intimidating screen, to be honest, if you're the first time seeing it.
Yeah.
Because the DM is very much like the puppet master, I guess you could say. And the players are, you guys are all on a team, and that's meant to be obvious.
I think the thing too is that I think people can get maybe freaked out about the concept of having to improvise and like what that means. But really, like we're improvising every conversation we have. really.
Yeah.
So if someone who is a more experienced or more confident role player takes the reins of a conversation, all you have to do is respond. You do that anyway, right? In your
In real
daily
life,
life.
yeah.
So
Yep.
maybe it won't be perfect, but you can just answer questions and that's fine too. Maybe like you'll learn something about your character that you didn't know, or a decision will be made and you're like, oh, that's really interesting. I'm going to continue with that.
Mhm. I think there's also a point here in because both of your guys' examples were kind of solving it within the game. Sometimes it may not be immediate. Sometimes a player is totally comfortable not being the center of attention. I think if a table kind of clocks that one player like never talks, I think that there's an opportunity after the game to kind of talk about it, be like, hey, I noticed you were rather quiet. Are you comfortable with that? Or would you want to be more present? And kind of finding that out. But if, as a player, if you're playing with a group that's a lot more practiced and just one player's kind of, if I'm going on and on, for example, it's important for people to kind of take a step back and go like, am I talking too much?
Yeah.
If so, and Anthony, you said this earlier, and you said it as a joke, but I think this is a great example. Brian actually brought this up to me the other day, and I was like, I really like that. And he's like, if you're talking, just turn to another player and go, what do you think?
Yeah.
And that you get another person in on the conversation right there.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way to kind of pass the buck and get another opinion.
And I think the important thing to remember as well, I mentioned this multiple times, but it's a collaborative experience. So if you are in a campaign, you really have to be aware of if you're kind of hogging the attention or trying to like drive your story, because it's not just yours.
Yeah.
So including other people in the experience and in the role play has to be like first priority, because it's a game for everyone, not just for you.
Yeah. You can't have an ego in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
There's no ego in Dungeons and Dragons. Well,
on that note,
I think that's
I
where
have one more
Oh.
point about asking, as you're talking, what do you think? That kind of thing. That's a great way to get a more reserved player involved in their own personal character story. Something major happens in the plot of the story, and the person who is pretty comfortable role playing at the table starts to strike up a conversation with the other players, and then they turn to the one who doesn't talk too much and like, hey, what does your character think about what just happened? And then that character gets a chance to discover about themselves, or I guess the player gets to discover about their character, what that character would think in that situation.
And I mean, and the worst thing, if that player isn't comfortable with it, they'll probably tell you that they'd rather sit this one out and be like, all right, that's fair enough. But I think that's where we're going to be ending this session. Christy, Anthony, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having us, Danny.
yeah.
Absolutely. And for any listeners at home, if you have any questions you'd like me to ask my guests, please email those questions to dicelychannel.com. Dicelychannel.com. Wow, I am flubbing
You
this.
did already say this part.
Yes.
He likes to repeat it.
Gotta hammer it. I gotta get those questions. Dicelychannel@gmail.com. Christy and Anthony, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, as I mentioned last time, you can find me on Instagram at you can
Just getting close, Christy, to get closer to our mic.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We almost were over, so my ADHD brain was like, time to leave.
I get it.
So as I mentioned last time, you can find me on Instagram at Christy Clow or on YouTube under my name as well. And come hang out as I make fun, nerdy content.
And could you spell Clow for the listeners?
I'll spell my whole name
yeah,
because
that's a good idea.
not everyone spells Christy the same way. So it's CHRISTYCLOW.
And there you can find her on Instagram and YouTube.
Yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at Anthony the DM. And if you're looking for someone to bring you through a wonderful adventure, maybe a 1-shot, a 3-shot, a 5 or more shot, you can check out my Fiverr page as well. It's linked in my Twitter description.
And I highly recommend him. He does good story.
I do a good
He
story.
does good story.
It's very nice.
Story in the oven, it come out good. Mwah.
Golden brown, as all good stories should be.
Good crust. Mwah.
Thank you for everyone tuning in to Speak Dicely. My name is Teni Brant, and I hope to speak Dicely again with you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. The Speak Dicely podcast is produced by Teni Brant. The intro and outro music were created by Salik Brant. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Dicely DnD. And we thank you for your support.